Here we go. Good morning. Welcome in. Thanks for making us your morning drive time show, the Out of Bounds Show. ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Lunch today brought to you by Taste Italian Restaurant in the Renaissance, now open. And we're live in the Bank Plus studio. And this SEC Insider Hit is brought to you by Sound and Communications. SoundComAV.com. If you're looking for a video wall for your school, law firm, business, hospital, that's powered by Sound and Communications. Your next video wall is brought to you by SoundComAV.com. We welcome in our friend Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans, NFL, SEC football, among other sports, because we're going to ask him about another sport here before we get into some football. But Mike D, WWL Radio TV New Orleans, LSU football, Saints football shows there, and you can find this dude everywhere at Mike Detillier on Twitter. Mike D, did y'all talk any Ryne, Sandberg, and Chicago Cubs and Harry Carey yesterday?
Yes, we did. I think about, I grew up late 60s into the 70s, and, you thought about the top second baseman at that time, and Joe Morgan, because Joe started with Houston, and he got traded to the Reds, and he was part of the Big Red Machine in the 70s. Man, they were really good. And Rod Carew, a lot of people kind of miss him on that because Rod was one of the best hitters I've ever seen with the Minnesota Twins. And he played 10 years at second base before he got moved to first base, and he ended it with the Angels. He was a designated hitter. In late 70s into the 80s, it started the cable explosion in the United States, where cable TV was there, and WTBS in Atlanta, WGN in Chicago. You were able to watch every Braves and Cubs baseball game. And Ryne Sandberg was part of you growing up. I watched him. And, he was just so consistent as a second baseman. You think about all those Gold Gloves that he won, but he sprayed the ball all over the field. He was a terrific hitter. And at that time, and, for a lot of people a certain age, they don't get it, but that was just the game of the week on Saturday afternoons. That's when you watch baseball, a nationally televised game. They didn't have games during the week. But WGN in Chicago and TBS in Atlanta were able to show that on the basic cable. And so there were probably two generations of fans that grew up watching Ryne Sandberg and his consistency, and he was such a great player. And I always kind of tip the cap, people who can do it consistently, year to year. And there wasn't much fall off, even as he got later in his career. And Ryne was one of those guys, just a terrific player, a guy who understood who he was, very confident as a baseball player. But, man, if you grew up in that age, especially into the 80s, into the 90s, man, Ryne Sandberg was a constant because you could watch every game on WGN, on the most basic cable system that you had. And I knew he was fighting. I've been told by some people that sort of know him much better than I do that he was really fighting it, and it was difficult for him those last couple of months fighting cancer. And God bless him. You lose a little part of your youth and your mortality, and that's why people react when someone younger dies that you grew up watching. I think part of you feels, hey, I'm not getting any younger either. But Ryne, man, fantastic guy, great player. And he grew up in that age of cable TV.
Yeah. No, I think Mike D frames it up well. Mike Detillier on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line talking about Ryne Sandberg and the fact once WGN and TBS was delivered to so many homes, as Mike D said, for me, I was a kid, okay, 1983, I'm 10 years old, and I get to watch the Cubs and Sandberg and the Braves and Dale Murphy all the time. And then, as Mike knows, you got to watch the other team too. So it opened up a world that we didn't have when they were playing the Phillies, Mets, Padres, Dodgers, and Astros. So you got to see all those players too, and that was magical for those of us. Now, we have everything on stream, and we can watch every college baseball game we want, which is simply remarkable. What's also wild, Mike D, or fascinating, is that Ryne Sandberg was a star, no doubt, but he was very low-key, as you know. I mean, he just head down, did his stuff. The biggest star at that time for the Cubs was their play-by-play guy, Harry Carey. Isn't that crazy that even though Sandberg was good and Sutcliffe and Lee Smith and so on, that Harry Carey was the star of the show, even though they had some damn good players, Mike D?
Yeah, I think, his career was wild too. I mean, it just wasn't with the Cubs. Harry, he sort of bounced around a little bit, but man, he found his niche. And when Mike Ditka was here, man, Mike had some great Harry Carey stories. And Harry, he kind of liked to tip it a little bit, and depending on what game and his mood, you really got the great Harry Carey. But to think about, he satired on Saturday Night Live, which was big back then. I mean, it really was. And, man, Ditka, because I think Mike probably was tipping with him too. He got some stories about Harry Carey, but, man, he was great, and he was the voice that if you couldn't watch the game and just could hear it and you heard that voice, you knew you were listening to the Cubs because of Harry Carey. I mean, it was distinctful. It wasn't what they would teach you.
No.
If you go to journalism school.
Great point.
He was off the cuff. He was going to tell you certain things that, they would probably tell you don't say. But Dizzy Dean was one of the first to do it, former Cardinals pitcher. And Dizzy was a national announcer at that time. And Dizzy would pitch for all kind of stuff. People would send him, he would talk about, certain products, and, that company would send it to him because they heard it on NBC. Dizzy team would talk about. Dizzy was a little bit, he sort of set that up pretty good for himself. Dizzy was the first to do it nationally, but then we saw it with Harry Carey. And, man, he was great, and he turned that into kind of a self-promotion stuff by himself. And he was the first announcer, you could say, that really turned that kind of tide into people kind of, you associate yourself if it was a certain beer or a certain bread or, it didn't really matter. And Harry did it better than anybody. Really, really did. And he was part of Chicago. And, for people who didn't get that opportunity to go to Wrigley Field, he gave you to feel like you were there through the broadcast. Very few people can do that. Very few. Even today, I mean, come on, that's just a handful of people. They're coming out with a book on John Madden and Pat Summerall. How they worked as a team together. I think that'll be out next. Well, we're not in August yet, so this will be in September. That'll come out, and you think about when you just heard Summerall and Madden, you knew that was a big game. And with Harry Carey, you knew it was Cubs baseball.
Yes. And WGN, that platform helped to make him a star. And then his personality and persona, which Mike just did a great job describing, made Harry Carey a star, which then delivered us Ryne. I mean, think about how many big moments Harry Carey delivered to us that Ryne Sandberg did. I mean, that's the connectivity tissue that, I mean, Mike and I are in the business, but that's why we were there, right? Pat Summerall and John Madden framing up a big play. And same with Harry Carey.
Big games, big plays.
Yeah.
And to think, the Cubs, mid-'80s, they were one game away from going to the World Series.
84.
And it was the Padres, San Diego Padres. And, man, they had a collection of people from all other teams. Reggie Jackson was with them. Steve Garvey had left the Dodgers to go to San Diego. Rod Carew was there, talked about, and he had left. And, they had a collection of star guys, and the Cubs had them. And they go to San Diego, and the Padres sweep them 3 straight games. Bang, bang, bang. And it was all over because no one really picked the Cubs to go, to be an advancement team that year. Man, and they were super. And really it was Ryne Sandberg that year. It really was. He really sort of carried them, and he was the kind of the engine that fueled that. But, man, they were so close to getting to the World Series, and then to have the Padres win those 3 games straight.
That broke my heart. 1984. I was crushed. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I was locked into Sandberg and Lee Smith and Sutcliffe and that group.
And you know who was the general manager of that team?
Who?
Jim Finks.
Oh, you said that a week or two ago. That's right.
Jim was the GM that year.
Wow.
And he, because he had just left the Bears. Him and Papa Bear got along for the most part. And then Papa Bear hires Mike Ditka without consulting Jim. And Jim had that in his contract. That was it. He stayed for a little while, but he had had enough of it. And, Ditka wasn't his guy, obvious. And so they clashed. So he leaves the Bears, and they were really building something back then. You could tell. But Jim had pieced together that team that ended up winning it all, just a couple of years later. But he didn't care for Ditka, didn't like his personality, didn't think it would sustain. And him and the old Papa Bear clashed, and so he left, and the Cubs hired him as their GM because of his management skills. And Jim knew a little bit about baseball, and he really got it clicking, and it was like lightning in a bottle.
Wow. All right, so roughly when did Jim Finks become the general manager of the New Orleans Saints, Mike D?
86.
Okay.
He had been recommended because of the fact John Meekum had sold the team in 85 to Tom Benson. And Tom kept everybody basically in their position, what they had. In Bum Phillips was the head coach. Bum had said numerous times, I told Tom, you don't have to keep me. You don't have to pay me. I'll walk away. This is your team now. When I signed on with Meekum. I didn't sign on with you. And Tom Benson said, no, I'm going to keep you. And so Bum lasted about half a year, and then he quit. And Wade took over. His son Wade Phillips took over. But I think Bum's heart wasn't in it anymore. And I think he looked for a way out. And how many people would tell the owner, you don't have to pay me? Very few people would beat that. But that was just the way Bum was, And so afterwards, Tom decided that he was going to make changes in the organization, and he got a lot of recommendations. But a lot of people said, hey, go hire Jim Finks. Jim Finks is the guy. And Jim took over early in 1986, and it changed the fortunes of Saints football from then on. because of the fact the Finks and Jim Mora connection really, really worked. And there was some talent on this team before. It just hadn't clicked. And so, man, they rode with it. That was some good teams. And Mora almost killed them year one because of the practice sessions. Bobby, man, he tells that story about we were dead legged the first 5 or 6 games of the year because of what Mora had put him through in the summer. And we've had Coach Mora on, and he's like, Bobby, I apologize. I should have never ran y'all through that. And it really, they were right around the 500 mark, but they were a losing team the first year. But the second year, man, it caught a fire. And that's when the double-digit winning team and first time they ever made the playoffs.
Isn't that incredible? Jim Finks tied to the Chicago Cubs and Ryne Sandberg and Harry Carey, and then takes the Saints job, and finally the Saints drives the Saints to the playoffs because God, they were god awful from 67 to 87 or whatever it was.
And how close Jim was to being the commissioner.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, he was just a couple votes away, but there was a younger group of owners that had decided Jim's not for this job. We want somebody younger. We want somebody that is not going to be hardline with the player association. We want somebody that can get along because they had been through a strike. And Jim was not the easiest negotiator around, especially with players. And my radio partner can attest to that because he didn't play a season because he refused to pay him. But so he just came a couple votes shy of being the commissioner, and he missed out on it. I can't say he was bitter about it. He just said, hey, listen, that was part of the business. People like Jerry Jones, Eddie DeBartolo at that time, who had just sort of gotten into the business, they didn't want Finks at all. And they could see free agency was going to hit. And they didn't think Jim was the right guy to do that. And they wanted a negotiator that could get them more money from the TV networks. Because Jim made the comment that he felt that may have been as big of a difference. They felt, that Tagliabue being an attorney was better as a negotiator on that part, and it turned out to be right. And then Jim got sick 2 years later, passed away very quickly. But Jim was a 2-pack a day guy. That was regular. He was one of the few guys. My grandfather did it too. He would light one cigarette with the other cigarette he just finished. I had a grandfather exactly like that. Exactly like it.
Oh, man. Mike Detillier sharing some great stories on the Out of Bounds show and the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. All right. So, man, was that kind of like the Wild Wild West, the late 80s covering so the Saints weren't any good. So you start in sports and the Saints aren't any good, but you're covering them. And I guess LSU was notorious for being up and down in the 80s and 90s. They'd have a great year and then they fall apart. So
Orange Sparger was the guy, okay? Because Jerry Stovall was, as you put it, figured they'd lose a head coach to a plane crash, Bo Ryne, who came in from North Carolina State. And Bo had a lot of credentials. He was an Ohio State guy, and everybody thought Bo was going to be the man, and then he dies in a plane crash. And then they elevate Jerry Stovall, and you're right. It was up and down, up and down, up and down. And they hired the old pop, Bill Ornsparger. And Bill was not the greatest salesman recruiter, but boy, could he coach.
Okay.
And Pete Jenkins tell me that all the time. Man, I thought I knew a lot about coaching. and handling people. But, Arnsparger was the master of it. And he said, we had some really good years under Bill Arnsparger. And then when Bill left, it came down to two guys. It came down to either hire Steve Spurrier, who wanted the job, or Mike Archer.
Wow.
And they got Mike Archer. And Steve never forgot that. Never forgot it. I mean, he always, even in interviews today, I've heard about how much he wanted to be the head coach at LSU at that time.
He said it on this show, Mike D.
Yeah. And, man, you think about with the athletes they had here. Now, Florida's got them too now. They got tremendous athletes to run that, running fun gun offense. And but he never forgot it. He laid it to LSU. Now, they did beat him when Florida was number one, but, man, Steve, he rolled over him a lot of times and always kind of stuck it to him because, he felt as though they had made they made a mistake with elevating Mike Archer instead of going with the outsider and Steve Spurrier. But, and then then it was really the wild roller coaster. Curly Hallman comes in, Jerry DiNardo, and then they made the big hire. They were on the verge of hiring Mark Richt, who was at Georgia at that time. And at the final moments,
Saban?
Here comes Nick Saban.
Unbelievable, Mike. We've only got a minute and a half. We're going to have to pick up on that. I did not. So it came down to Richt and Saban. And I guess Jodine Sr., who had made some bad hires, finally made a great hire because that was before Bertman taking over as AD. Is that right, Mike D?
Yeah, it was Jodine. It was Joe. And he got a call from Nick's attorney, Jimmy Sexton, saying, hey, listen, Nick is interested, but he can't go down there. So they sent his wife, and Miss Terry, she kind of toured Baton Rouge and everything. And they had a contest if you could pick the winner pick the new head coach at LSU. I don't know what you would get out of it, but it was at TJ Ribs restaurant. And so Miss Terry dumps Nick's name in there. I think she ended up winning. It really didn't matter. But she was the only winner because nobody had Nick in the deal. He came in like down the track. He was the guy down the stretch. It literally was going to be Rick.
Wow.
Everything at that time was him, that he was going to get the job. And Mark was a successful coach.
Sure,
no question about it. But man, Nick changed the fortunes
everything
of LSU football. Sure did.
God, that's a great story. Mike D., have a great week. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
At Mike Detillier on Twitter, is there a better storyteller in sports? I'm not sure that there is. I don't know how much Bobby Hebert lets him talk on their show, but is there a better storyteller in sports? Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans.